In recent years, few figures have commanded as much attention and controversy in black political discourse as Tariq Nasheed, originally gaining prominence as a filmmaker, social media commentator, and provocateur. Nasheed has positioned himself as a central voice in debates around black identity, lineage, and political advocacy in the United States. At the center of this rise is the movement known as Foundational Black Americans, or FBA. According to its stated purpose, FBA exists to advocate specifically for black Americans whose lineage traces back to slavery and the early formation of the United States. The movement argues that this group has unique historical claims to reparations, policy protections, and political consideration, claims that are often diluted, they argue, when black Americans are grouped into a broader global or diasporic category. On the surface, this framing appears straightforward, even reasonable. Identity-based advocacy is nothing new. However, beneath the rhetoric of lineage and justice lies a growing set of contradictions, controversies, and concerns that deserve closer examination. This video is not an attack on black American history, nor is it a dismissal of legitimate grievances. Instead, this is a critical look at how movements form, who benefits, and what happens when identity becomes a brand rather than a bridge. To understand the FBA movement, we must first understand its origin story.
Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula. Where are you? Are you Hispanic? Like, are you Mexican or Colombian? What are you?
I'm Mexican American.
Mexican American. There it is. So what's on your mind? Hop on camera. Let's see what's going on with you, brother. Hop on camera.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? Like, I've heard a lot about the FBA movement and stuff, right? And like, I respect it, right? I respect it, but there's certain things, that I don't like about the rhetoric, right? But a lot of the people who I'm actually friends with, they're FBA, right? So we have debates, we have discussions. But at the end of the day, I do respect what you're doing. But if it's cool, I would like to address certain, parts of the ideology, right?
What's the ideology? Please explain.
Well, there's, that's kind of why I want to hear from the horse's mouth, right? But, you hear, yeah.
You said it. What's the ideology?
The ideology is that FBA, they're the indigenous to America, and they're everyone else, Mexicans, Native Americans, they're pretending, and they're not really the people from the Americas, and things like that, right?
No. Foundational Black American means one thing. I don't know what the shit you just said, I don't know what that's about. Okay. My lineage, let's just make it real simple. I can trace my lineage here to America to the 1700s, even before America was founded.
Okay.
I can, as a black person. That's what a foundational Black American is. A black person whose lineage goes to the beginning of the United States.
How do you guys feel about like Africans then, right? Like, because that's part of the, the rhetoric that I kind of disagree with as well, right? Africans, and it's usually derogatory, right? I know a lot of African
Don't matter.
people.
Okay, listen to what I'm saying. That shit don't matter. Because some of us are cool with Africans. Some people might have an issue with Africans. That don't change your lineage. None of that changes lineage, sir. Those are opinions based on individual people. What makes you a foundational Black American is lineage only. Does your lineage go back to the beginning of this country? Yes or no? That's it. Whether you like an African or you embrace Pan-Africanism, there are foundational Black Americans who are married to Africans. There are foundational Black Americans who are Pan-Africanists. There are foundational Black Americans who are Sambos. There are foundational Black Americans who are Republicans. There are foundational Black Americans who are Democrats. All of that is inconsequential. It's all lineage. The only thing that is a commonality is the lineage. Does your lineage go to the beginning of this country? Did you come from the lineage of the people who built the United States? That is us. So that is nothing to do with an ideology whatsoever.
Okay, yeah. So like, I hear different rhetorics, right? So I'm glad that I'm hearing it, from you, right?
Right.
Because from my understanding, you're like the leader or like the founder of like the FBA kind of
Yeah,
thing,
you
right?
can't be a leader of a lineage.
Right.
Yeah, you cannot be the leader of a lineage at all, sir. It doesn't work like that.
Tariq Nasheed has consistently stated that FBA is not an ideology, not an organization, and not a political party, but simply a descriptor of lineage. According to him, one cannot join or leave FBA. You either descend from enslaved black Americans in the United States, or you do not. That framing is powerful. Historically, black Americans whose families endured slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, and state-sanctioned violence have often seen their specific struggles generalized under broader racial categories. The call to recognize lineage-based harm and demand lineage-based redress speaks to a real frustration. However, movements are not defined solely by their stated intentions. They are defined by how they are practiced, who shapes the narrative, and how dissent is treated. While Nasheed claims not to be a leader, he is undeniably the movement's primary spokesperson, cultural enforcer, and gatekeeper of acceptable discourse. He popularized the term, monetized the branding, and controls much of the public-facing narrative. And that raises an important question. If a movement truly has no ideology, why does it consistently produce ideological outcomes?
Yeah. Like, how can you be the leader of 43 million people?
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, because the people that I usually associate with FBA are the ones that are like, saying all the things that I was talking about, the Native Americans, the African people, even Caribbean people,
No,
and
see, that's
stuff
the thing.
like that.
You can't pick and choose who's foundational Black American or not. It doesn't work like that. A person ain't FBA because you feel like you can pick and choose. It doesn't work like that. A person
No, but
isn't
they're
a leader.
claiming it.
No, even if you don't claim it, you're still a foundational Black American. Just like the term African American. There's a lot of Black people who don't like the term African American, but they're still African American. If they fill out paperwork,
Right.
they have to write down African American. My grandmother never used that term. Technically, she was labeled African American. You understand? So whether or not you wake up and say, hey, I'm a foundational Black American, that doesn't matter. You are still a foundational Black American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can respect that.
How long you been over here from Mexico?
I mean, I was born here in America, so like, my family, I know my lineage all the way back before Mexico, before Spain, and all of that. So I know like my full genealogy, right? And my thing was like Mexicans usually get taken out of the equation, but from my understanding, right? Basically, the indigenous Americans were dark melanated people, and stuff like that, right? And there was Tenochtitlan, right? That was kind of like the Mecca during the Americas and stuff like that. So they try to take, Mexicans out of the equation kind of thing, right?
Now, what
But
do you mean? Who tries to take Mexicans out of the equation? Out
well, a
of what?
lot of people that claim FBA, this is giving me a new clarity, a new perspective
Okay,
on
slow
like
down,
what.
slow down. Okay, out of what equation? What equation? What equation? I'm lost on that one.
What do you mean?
You say people try to take Mexicans out of the equation. What equation?
They try to say like that we're like pretendians and we have no ties to the indigenous Americas, and things like that.
Okay, that's okay. Those are individual things. Listen, we're not a group, so yeah, whatever argument you have with individual people, that ain't got nothing to do with the rest of the 43 million people, sir. I don't know what that argument is.
Well, right, but like
I think you're frustrating yourself because you keep thinking that there's some kind of group in your mind, and if somebody says something, you think that everybody's supposed to agree with it. I don't. It's something going on in your mind that's frustrating you because we're not a group, and you're framing of us as some kind of organization with a hierarchy. It ain't panning out, so it's kind of messing up your narrative. You know?
no, yeah, no, it is because like I've never heard you personally speak about it, but I've known that like, from my understanding, you're like the creator of it kind of thing, right?
I
Um,
coined the term foundational Black American. I coined the term. Just like, listen, there was a guy, the Mexican identity as we know it today was a guy named Jose Vasconcelos. I think that's how I pronounce his name, Jose Vasconcelos. He was an activist out there in Mexico. He created the whole concept of La Raza, the cosmic race. He was basically saying that Mexicans are basically a form of Europeans. They're the sonic race. They are basically, they should be recognized almost as a subset of Europeans. So the whole La Raza stuff came from this guy, came from one guy. So he's not the leader, but this was a guy who was an activist for the culture there. Just like we're activists for our culture that already exists. That doesn't make us the leader or the founder of the culture. We've been around since the beginning of this country. So I'm not the founder of Foundational Black Americans. That's
you
ridiculous.
coined it.
Yeah, I just kind of put some words together,
Well,
and we've used the term foundational before. There's some writings of W.B. Du Bois talks about how Black Americans are the foundation of this country. So we've used terms like that before. I just kind of helped popularize it, but every term had to be popularized by somebody, right?
right. Well, and I just want to chime in real quick. So, the La Raza stuff, that seems like it came much later, right? Because the reason, Mexicans in particular, we have a rich history, right? We have Moors, we have Spaniards, we have indigenous Americans, and we're mestizos, right? So the thing is, before Mexico existed, we were New Spain and we had to get our independence to become Mexicans. And the story behind becoming Mexicans were that we were the Spaniards or the Criollos, the Spaniards that were born in Mexico, and New Spain was a viceroyalty of the Spanish Empire. So at the time of the Spanish Empire, we were a viceroyalty, meaning we were considered full Spaniards. Other countries and other, populations were considered colonized, right? But Mexico in particular, we were actually like considered full out Spaniards on equal footing to the Spaniards from Spain. So basically,
I don't know on paper, but not really. Y'all not even on the same level as the Spanish from Spain today. They don't really rock with
no,
y'all like
well,
that.
yeah, but that's like that's all colonialism because the thing is, the reason we became Mexicans was because they said, "Hey, why are we going to be subject to the Spanish crown when we're full-blooded Spaniards? I mean, when we're full status Spaniards, but we're also Aztecs." So the first people to claim white were the Spaniards, and the first people to claim Los Americanos or the Americans was the Mexican emperor who decided, hey, we're going to do our own thing now because we no longer need to be ruled under the Spanish throne. We were giving them all our silver, all our agriculture, and we were the economic engine for the Spanish Empire. So when we flipped the switch, then the rest of Central and South America, they followed suit. So now they became, oh, we're from Belize, we're from Panama, we're from Brazil, and all these nations, split up, but at one time they were all under La Hispanidad, right? Like the Spanish Empire. So the person that actually like really claimed the term Mexican was the first emperor that advocated towards Mexicans becoming a thing because we weren't Mexicans yet. We were Spaniards and we were the mix of the Spaniards that came and mixed with the Aztecs.
Okay, now here's the thing. You guys are not the Aztecs, though. You guys are not the Aztecs, and the first Mexican was born in 1521. All right?
Well, no, because here's the thing, right? Because the FBA group, right? The reason, what I, know as the FBA group, the reason that they got reclassified as Africans is because of this, right? In America, there was indigenous people, there was tribes. No one called themselves the Aztecs, right? It was the Mexica and then the Zapotecas, and a whole bunch of different kinds of, tribes and by their own names, their own languages, their own cultures. There's the Mayans, there's the Olmecs, all these people, they never called themselves that, right? So the thing is, if you were anybody, you were in what we call Mexico today, Mexico City, in Tenochtitlan, right? So the thing is, Mexicans, right? We're different than the Aztecs. The Aztecs were darker
Right.
people.
Right. Yeah, you're not an Aztec. In fact, the non-Spanish speaking indigenous people are discriminated against heavily in Mexico. You marginalize those people down there, so you're not them. So
Right,
it's
but no,
funny.
but wait,
It's
wait,
funny
wait.
when people try to spin the block and claim the indigenous down there, but then marginalize those people. Y'all had an ethnogenesis. The first Mexican was born in 1521. You understand? 1521, 1522. You understand? And that was Cortez. You know what I'm saying? That was
Right,
Martin
right,
Cortez.
right. But hold on real quick. So, but the thing is, you guys aren't the Aztecs either, and let me tell you why. Okay,
Yeah.
this is why, right? So at one point, Mexicans did not exist, right?
Right.
Mexicans are mixed people, right? So
Right.
we did not exist until 1821, right? So before then, we were mixed in and we were black as well, right?
Yeah, they were
Our
black. There were blacks down
ancestors,
there. Yeah, there were blacks down there. Yes.
yeah, so our ancestors, right, or who we call the Aztecs, we would consider them black, quote unquote, phenotypically, right? They're darker, they're more melanated, and even today, in Mexico they say indios, right? And it is like a derogatory term, as like you're uneducated, you're poor, and you have no manners, and things like that. They'll call you an indio, an Indian, right? So that is true, right? But here's the thing. So Tenochtitlan, that was like the Mecca of the world, not just the Americas, the world, right? So we are both equally remnants. So yes, we can say that maybe, phenotypically you guys might look more alike, right? But here's the thing. So Tenochtitlan, everybody wanted that. That was the choice land above all else. That was like, New York City or whatever, that was like the capital. So what happened was everyone starts invading it, right? It's getting invaded from all angles and stuff like that. So what happens during a WAR? There's refugees, right? There's people that leave, right? So the thing is, the people who got reclassified as African, the reason they're reclassified as African, it has nothing to do with their skin color, right? What happened was they fled, right? They went into the Caribbean, they went through the Gulf of Mexico, into Florida, into Georgia, into the Mississippis, and things like that, right? So the thing is, they left Mexico. They left the fort, right? So it's like when you leave the fort, you lose your claim to that, right? So
Man,
the
what kind of
reason
history are you man, are you making this stuff up as you go along, brother? None of this
No, I'm not
this
making
is
it up.
so incorrect, brother.
No, because okay, so
This
explain
is
this.
this is very
Why
incorrect.
why are the
Listen,
Caribbeans Spanish Jamaica? Why and
because the
things like
Spanish
that.
colonized those places. Spain colonized Jamaica first before the British.
One of the most persistent criticisms of Tariq Nasheed and the FBA movement is the accusation of grifting. The idea that the movement exists less as a political project and more as a personal revenue stream. Let's be clear, making money does not automatically invalidate activism. Many activists monetize their platforms. The issue arises when financial incentives appear to drive rhetoric rather than solutions. Over the years, Nasheed has generated income through paid livestream battles, merchandise branded with FBA slogans, films and documentaries tied to FBA narratives, exclusive online communities, and donation-driven broadcasts at the same time. Critics note a lack of tangible outcomes. No legislation drafted, no mass policy coalition formed, no institutional infrastructure beyond media content. Instead, controversy itself becomes the product. Inflammatory rhetoric drives engagement. Engagement drives donations. Donations reinforce the authority of the figure at the center. When critics question this cycle, they are often dismissed as anti-black, foreign, or agents, a rhetorical move that shuts down accountability rather than addressing substance. This is a classic pattern seen in many personality-driven movements. The leader is framed as the movement, and questioning the leader becomes synonymous with betraying the cause.
Right. So the whole
Spain colonized Hispaniola before France got the other half, which turned it into Haiti. Yeah, they were here first. The Spanish colonizers came here first, and they brought black people with them. They had black guides and black translators with them. And remember, Mexico was also a slave colony. There were hundreds of thousands of black people enslaved in Mexico, and y'all mixed in with them too.
right, but we also mix with the West Africans. We mix with the Moors. We mix with the Sephardic Jews. We mix with the native populations. We're a mix of multiple populations. But
Okay,
the
now slow it down, because now we're getting all over the place.
yeah.
Now, what does that have to do with foundational black Americans?
No, this is what it has to do with it, right? Because
Drive it home. Let's go right.
okay, I'll drive it home. So the thing is, the reason Mexicans are mixed, the reason we don't look like the Aztecs anymore is because we mixed with all the invaders. The reason that people who are classified as Africans aren't as mixed, right, is because they left. So when you leave, you keep your identity, you keep your phenotype and stuff like that. So when you're in a new land, right, then it's like you're away from the fold. You no longer have the protection of the entire population. So that's
What?
basically the reason for the transatlantic slave trade. It was because they were separated from the greater population that stayed in Mexico. So that's why, when you say, oh, we're not Aztecs. No, we are Aztecs. We might not look like them.
What does that have to do with? You're not explaining what that has to do with foundational black Americans. You're just giving random tidbits about the Aztecs. What does any of that have to do with foundational black Americans?
Because okay, so who are the real Native Americans?
What does that have to do with foundational black Americans, sir? None of that.
Because foundational black Americans claim to be the ones who built America. The ones who built America are the First Nations before slavery. The Constitution, everything like that is based off of the First Nations. It's not based on the transatlantic slave trade. It's based on
where in the United States did non-foundational black Americans build before we did? Go.
The reason you even call yourself people, that comes from Native Americans.
Okay. Before foundational black Americans started building up over here, where were these other people building? Name the location.
In the Americas.
Where?
In modern day Mexico, in Arizona, in
what was in Arizona?
In New Mexico, in Utah, in Ohio, in California, in New York.
Why was New York? Why was New York a swamp before black people started clearing the brush and building the roads? New York was a damn swamp.
Well, I think it's important that we define black. So black to me
in the 1600s, when the Dutch brought black people up there to New York, they called it New Amsterdam, something like that. And I think it was the Lenape Indians or something like that. And they did that little janky deal where they sold Manhattan for $24 in beads or some shit like that. There were black people there building up New York. They had to clear the road, clear the brush. They literally built Wall Street. What was going on there before black people built it?
Bro, we had Tenochtitlan.
That's down in the middle of Mexico. That ain't New York.
No, yeah, right. So I'm not saying foundational black Americans didn't contribute. They have in the military
no.
and things like that, right?
My ass. I'm talking about the foundation. Damn, contribute. No, contribute means somebody just came and threw some on the pile. No, I'm talking about the foundation. Who was the foundation of
The
building this shit?
The Native Americans, including
Not the
some
red ones,
foundational
not
Black
the red ones,
Americans.
not the red ones, not the red
Yes, the
ones.
red ones. Yeah,
Okay,
no,
what did they
yes.
build then? What did they build
The
up here in New York?
Constitution
What did
is
they build in New
based
York?
on.
No. The Iroquois, I know about that. What did they build here before we did?
I mean, there's a lot of ruins, right? There's the
Thank you.
mounds, the all that
Thank
kind
you.
of stuff,
Those
right?
were black people. Those were black people. The mound builders were
They
black.
were no. Hold on. So
The mound
black.
builders were black.
No, but hold on. But that's why I want to define black, because
Yeah.
black means sub-Saharan African, right?
No. That's they. American mean Negro. If you look at some of the early dictionaries talking about people of Negroid features, so we trying to play the black means sub-Saharan African. No, there were people over here when the white explorers came. They said they looked just like the people in Africa, but these were Native Americans.
Right,
Like Luzia
but
woman, Luzia down in South America, they have a woman named the oldest fossil found here is like 12,000 years old. Found in the Americas is a black woman named Luzia woman.
To understand why movements like FBA gain traction, we must confront uncomfortable truths about vulnerability within marginalized communities. Black Americans, particularly those facing economic precarity, social displacement, and historical erasure, are often searching for clarity, dignity, and belonging. Identity movements offer something powerful, a simple explanation for complex pain. But simplicity can be dangerous. When historical narratives are selectively framed, misinformation can masquerade as empowerment. Claims about indigenous history, migration, and identity are often presented without academic rigor, yet delivered with absolute certainty. This is where radicalized ignorance becomes profitable. Not ignorance is stupidity, but ignorance is unexamined certainty. When followers are encouraged to distrust scholars, dismiss historians, and reject nuance, they become dependent on the voice of the influencer. The movement no longer educates, it indoctrinates. Individuals are drawn in emotionally, not intellectually. Dissent feels like betrayal. Questions feel like disrespect. And over time, the movement becomes less about justice and more about loyalty. History is filled with movements that began with legitimate grievances and ended in fragmentation, paranoia, and harm. Blind allegiance to charismatic figures creates several risks. First, it discourages critical thinking. Followers repeat talking points without verification, turning debate into dogma. Second, it isolates communities. By framing outsiders, including other black people, as threats or imposters, movements fracture potential alliances. Third, it concentrates power. When one voice dominates, accountability disappears. We've seen this before. Movements that confuse identity with infallibility often collapse under their own contradictions, leaving followers disillusioned and politically adrift. Real liberation movements do not fear scrutiny. They invite it. So how do individuals protect themselves? First, separate identity from authority. No one owns your history. Second, verify claims. Read primary sources. Consult multiple historians. Be skeptical of anyone who dismisses all criticism as malicious. Third, follow outcomes, not personalities. Ask what has materially changed as a result of a movement's existence. Fourth, value complexity. History is rarely clean, simple, or emotionally convenient. Movements should empower you to think, not outsource your thinking. The struggle for justice for Black Americans is real. The demand for recognition of lineage-based harm is valid. But no movement is above critique, and no leader is beyond accountability. Tariq Nasheed and the FBA movement represent a problem in America, one where underprivileged people are taken advantage of and others are blamed. We must not follow people like Tariq who seek to exploit his own people for profit. Awareness is not betrayal. Critical thinking is not disrespect. And questioning leadership is not the same as denying history. If we truly care about the future of Black American advocacy, then we must demand more than slogans. We must demand substance.